Man, guys, tonight I was kind of going over everything right before I went to bed. I was supposed to go to bed right now. And I started thinking about the totality of the moment that we're living in right now. And I felt like I really needed to share this with you guys because I feel like it's very important that we actually talk about this. The world is at absolute chaos right now. We have conspiracy theories, and we have a main story that we're getting from the FBI on Charlie Kirk's murder. The main story is not adding up at all. There's a lot of inconsistencies. However, more evidence is coming, and it makes it to where, maybe we buy it, maybe we don't. Today's episode of Candace Owens was pretty powerful stuff, and she really went over a lot of the new evidence that came in. We're going to talk about that. I'm not going to get too sidetracked quite yet because I got to give you guys a breakdown, just a rough breakdown on all the stuff that's been going on in the last week. It's crazy. Some things that people aren't really talking about right now is that Qatar, home to the largest military base for the United States in the Middle East, okay, a nation that does big business with us, a major ally, a key player who has remained subservient to the United States or maybe just faithful beyond ethical, and has remained quiet and silent on Israel, essentially, in a way. At the same time, it's weird because they have like a good relationship with the United States, an okay relationship with Israel that's getting bad, but they also are the ones that are primarily funding Al Jazeera is basically a Qatari news source for one. And then you also have, it's very interesting, the relationship between Qatar and America. They have Al Jazeera News. They funded Hamas, right? Those are some interesting things about them. Yet they gave Trump a $400 million jet when he went out to the Middle East. And I don't know if maybe at that time where Qatar and America were, if they were just so happy to not see Biden, and they actually might have, just like me and you, the conservative voter out there that voted for him and is extremely disappointed. I'm raising my hand. I am one of those people, and I have the right to be, okay? Well, I'm not going to get into that, but if you listen to me, I will give you many good, valid reasons why we should not be trusting the Trump administration or anyone in his cabinet for that matter. From the disappointments of Tulsi Gabbard, who's essentially been completely neutered of all everything that she probably stood for. I don't know if she's just scared, she's playing ball. I don't know what's going on with any of these people. Are they under blackmail? Are they being possessed? Are they, what is going on with all these people in our cabinet? All of them are all falling in line right now. And to be honest with you, I'm just going to be honest. It's terrifying, okay? It's terrifying to watch our government do what it's doing right now and understanding that they are relying on people like you to not know because it's too depressing and life is so busy, and I'm not judging you, okay? I have an addiction to this stuff. It makes me depressed, and a lot of times it does. But at the same time, it's extremely necessary that we have an educated population and that we continue to use our abilities, that we have the most sacred thing that no man, no woman should have taken from them in this free country, and that is our freedom of speech and our autonomy as a nation, is at threat. I know you've been hearing it for a long time, guys, but I think you guys need to step back and take a look at the totality of the brazenness of the United States and they're subservient to another nation. Something that I genuinely believe. A man just lost his life for beginning to question it after telling people that he was worried. This man who I did not respect enough when he was alive, this man that I see a lot of great qualities in, and I take time to go back and listen to him, and even the things that they say he said that was really offensive, I think the mass majority of it, they either weren't intelligent enough to actually grasp the concept of what he was talking about, and that he might have been a little bit of tongue-in-cheek when he was trying to say stuff. And I get it that you are resentful that Donald Trump is in office, okay? I understand why you feel that way, okay? Seeing his smugness and seeing a lot of things about him and realizing how much of it was actually true. Jeffrey Epstein list. I've come to a position right now where I've realized that left and right, those paradigms that we are thinking about, they need to die with Charlie Kirk. I need you guys to recognize something I'm saying to you right now. I'm looking to you right in the eyes right now. And I hope and pray that somebody close to you shares this video with you and that your heart is open enough, whether you're on the right or on the left, right now. If you want to start thinking in the dichotomy, if you want to continue thinking in the dichotomy of left and right and how those two paradigms are to get along with each other, they want us to be arguing about that cliche bullshit that was a actual toxic part of the mind control that they use to keep us focused on each other instead of them. I need you to understand right now what I'm speaking to you. If you're out there on the left celebrating that this man was killed without having enough of an education, and I'm not blaming you, to recognize the likelihood with historical reference that this was perpetrated with our intelligence agencies of one sort and possibly of foreign nations, to think about the fact that the boy that was apprehended, which he definitely must have been involved in something, right? Regardless. They get patsies and they bring them in. And somehow they get connected in this circle and somehow subliminals are dropped out. Who knows what sort of things are going on, okay? But I can tell you a few things. MK Ultra is a real thing that really happened, okay? Psychological warfare is something that our nation has been using to perpetrate civil wars across the world. Why do you think they wouldn't be able to do it to us? Huh? Because we have guns? Yeah, perfect. You know what they want us? They want us to turn some guns on each other. That's what they want. They don't want us to be holding on to our ammunition. They want a reason to lock us down. I know a lot of people on the right now are celebrating about what's going on with ICE. They don't realize, and this is something that's a hard pill to swallow, okay, my friends? It's going to piss a lot of you guys off, but I'm going to tell you what my opinion is on it. My opinion is that more than likely, that infrastructure that's being built right now is built for people like you and me to go to. I want you to think about that before you go out there and start celebrating. And all these different little things that he's doing that you're hoorahing for that may or may not be constitutional, like getting rid of people that speak out against Israel, deporting people that are here for a college education because they spoke out against what Israel's doing, states getting denied protection and funding from FEMA if they get hit with a natural disaster, if they choose to boycott the Trump administration's love with Israel, for us to boycott business with them. Does anybody understand the significance that our freedom of speech would be taken away from this conservative, pro-American candidate, the one that cares so much about your freedom of speech, that he would turn around and use Charlie Kirk's death to possibly perpetrate new legislation that would put limits on freedom of speech? Maybe even some gun control, huh? Wouldn't that be nice? Things that Charlie Kirk was antithetical to, for one. And the fact is, this is a spun up narrative overall. This is the narrative that they want you to be believing. And I don't know exactly what the truth is. All I know is that for you to assume that this is based in reality is absolutely absurd given the history of everything. You know, we could sit back and we could think about just today the fact that Kash Patel was in court testifying that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked children to nobody. And the fact that Bill Ackman gave $1 million to the family when he was more than likely on the Jeffrey Epstein list. I'll probably get killed for saying this. Save this video. If it got out to enough people, it probably would end up resulting on my death. Because I'm putting together all these pieces. A lot of people aren't putting them together this way. Right now, they've got 2 new boycott laws that they're trying to put up. They're trying to talk about making a freedom of speech on the American people. They're going to be using his death to be taking away the sacred rights that Charlie Kirk died for, essentially. What did Charlie Kirk die for? Is there any significance to the martyrdom of him? Something that should be appreciated by all of mankind, regardless if they agreed with what he said. Let me tell you what he stood for. It's a lot bigger than your opinion. It's the right to have an opinion. It's the right to be able to have hard conversations with people and share them without fear of death in a free country. And to look back historically at the figureheads that the left mourned as someone that's not even a fan of the Trump administration, just a free thinker here. I'm going to tell you I'm disgusted with a lot of the behavior I've seen from the left. The fact that they've made people like Paul Rosenberg a 5-time child rapist. 5 children, 5 little boys this man got. And he was killed by Kyle Rittenhouse when he tried to protect his own life, when he was given a job to protect a car dealership. He used a gun to make sure the car dealership didn't get lit down and burnt like everything else in the city. They came after him for having it. The man protected himself, and one of the men that he killed, Paul Rosenberg, they yelled on the streets, "Say his name, say his name." That man. And you know what? People are going to hate me for saying it. But I say it like it is. And that'll probably get me killed too. But what he said, what he stands for, that man is the most important thing there is. So if you think people should die for saying stuff, also to think that he was one of the biggest threats to a nation committing genocide, and to think that the left couldn't even comprehend the possibility that maybe his death is because he was the biggest threat to that. He was the biggest threat. You know what they fear? They don't fear the left hating them anymore. They already know the left hates them. The left There's an 8% approval rate for Israel within the ideological left of America. And fracturing at a lightning speed is the same demographic that Charlie Kirk represented in the right and began to represent. The youth, the conservative youth, is something that he always represented, but a new faction of wide awake, seeing the writing on the wall, going, holy shit, why does every single politician I've ever seen, why are they all kissing a wall in a foreign country? Why is it that our country doesn't get to make decisions for ourselves? Like, what's going on? How are they lying to us about the Jeffrey Epstein list? Like, how is it that they're treating us like we're stupid? Like, why is it that the whole entire world has to sit back and watch? As we're the only nation that's really perpetuating 2 wars across the world. One of them a genocide. So let me rephrase that. 1 war, 1 genocide. 1 war that's unwinnable, and that the longer we continue to fund it, the worse it's going to be for that party, and the more likely they are to lose their nation as a whole, let alone they're dying by the hundreds of thousands and hundreds of millions, possibly. In an unwinnable war, they don't have enough men. They're pulling out children, 14 to 18 years old sometimes. And the average age there in Ukraine for their military, if you haven't caught on to what I was saying, is like in the high 50s right now. So we got all this stuff going on, okay? I could sit back and I could show you guys all this, but there's no way I'd be able to digest it in such a small section. And you should take some time to look all of that stuff up. Then, in the last week, since we're just doing a quick recap today, I already talked about Qatar. Now, Qatar, when it was bombed, they reacted quite negatively. We also got war in Yemen going on right now. Saudi Arabia and Israel also at war with Yemen right now. Just a few weeks back, they bombed and basically took out the entire prime minister and his entire cabinet pretty much for the Houthis. That's going down. Saudi Arabia is backing them up on that. I don't know if Saudi Arabia is going to back them up anymore. I need to get an update on that. We'll see what's going on after the bombing in Qatar really damaged a lot of their connections that were already getting very difficult politically for them to hold on to. Because the population of Muslims are so against what's happening in Palestine right now. So the governing powers are definitely not reflecting the population, kind of like our governing powers aren't reflecting our population overall, though we do have a lot of Christian Zionists out there. The interesting thing is that the kickbacks from this event could end up getting really bad. And we're going to switch over now, and we're going to hop on the side screen, all right, guys? And just forgive me, I'll be breaking some more stuff down. You guys have questions, please comment. Comment down here and ask me any questions. I'll send you any sources that you would like to see in regards to all this stuff. This is just news that I've been absorbing over the past few weeks when I'm driving or at work. And I think it's important that I share them. Sometimes I guess that's the gift. If I'm going to sit here and consume all this material, then, if I try to share it all with you guys, then we'd be talking about like an 8 or 9 hour episode, talking about all the different things I've seen. A lot of different drama going on right now in the Charlie Kirk camp. What's left of the turning point. And today, Tucker Carlson was on. He was on with J.D. Vance on Charlie Kirk's show. So we're gonna watch some snippets from that probably. I was gonna try and make this short and sweet. I think I did knock out a lot in 20 minutes. Damn. If you consider the multi-hour ones where I feel like I didn't do nearly as much as this. Let me see here. It's time that we switch over now. I'm going to tell you guys, a few days ago, 142 nations in the United Nations voted to recognize Palestine as a sovereign state. I guess 10 voted against and then 12 abstained. So a lot of the world is turning on Israel. And this is big deal. But at the same time, a lot of people are arguing that Israel is actually, with the backing of America, UN doesn't really have any teeth. As long as America is backing Israel, the UN isn't going to do shit about it. It's really kind of a power. This is just an argument that a lot of people are making, okay? Because a lot of the governing, you could only govern at a certain point. You have to be able to enforce it militarily, or it's just hollow words. Maybe trade sanctions, but I mean, honestly, dude, the international community, what we're doing to America right now with our international relations by backing Israel and by doing trade wars and all this different type of stuff, we are accelerating into chaos and financial collapse at a rate that's extremely difficult to even grasp, really. But I'm trying to be positive about all this, okay? What's the purpose of all this? Why would you sit back and just listen to me, some uneducated dude? I am educated. I live and breathe this stuff, if you couldn't tell by the way I'm absorbing it and sharing it with you. The fun thing is, you guys could always go and look up this stuff. And I am welcome to being corrected, and I'm welcome to be called out, and I'm welcome to having discussions and debates on anything. Because not everyone's going to agree with me on everything. There's certain things I'm going to say, they're going to be a little hyperbolic. It's fun. It's a little bit fun. Plus, I can get a little carried away sometimes, But overall, there's a necessity for people to be sharing this message from a standpoint like mine. I'm a disgruntled, unhoused, conservative-ish, liberal-ish, free mind, libertarian, and I think the way that I think is it's not unique. It's really like if the left and right were to sit down, I genuinely believe that the sane people on the left and the sane people on the right, if they sat down, they're all reasonable people that have been propagandized. And that this division right here that we're experiencing, the heightened division, is not natural. We're not meant to hate each other like this, guys. Seeing the reveling in a man die is very sad to me. It really actually breaks my heart to see where America's gotten right now. I just want to say that I think that right now, more important than ever, we need to be focusing on breaking our ties with the international community that calls itself our greatest ally, that is bringing America down so fast with their military actions, with their brazen anti-peace behavior as they continue what they believe is their religious duty to have the Greater Israel Project. None of this is a secret. There's patches on military that have the Greater Israel map on them. This isn't rooted in anything other than displacement, war, expansion. It's a religious war more than anything. And the more I dig into it, to be honest with you guys, as someone that doesn't want to be a Christian, never really believed in religion, I could tell you unequivocally, for a fact, in my hearts of hearts, the story of Jesus has to be real, because the rulers of this earth and the heinous activities they participate in, like what they did on the Jeffrey Epstein Island, the irreprehensible, sick, disgusting behavior of our government, regardless of what power faction they might pretend to be in. And it's undeniable that they're doing this. They get off on it when they have enough power to be able to do it. And there's nothing that we've been able to do yet about it. And it appears they have captured our government. But most of America can see what's happening. I'm just asking you, if you do agree with what I'm saying right now, then can you please try and cool people's heads off around you? It's time we stop looking at each other and start looking at the power axes and the illusions that they spin. Now, I'd be happy to admit that the Charlie Kirk shooting was something that happened more like they said, and they're going to continue to fabricate evidence to try and make it seem more realistic. That's something I'm rather sure of. They must be in a complete panic right now as to some details in their story do not add up. And they really can't erase those details. For example, we'll go into a little bit of, you guys could look this up on Kim Iverson, actually. Supposedly, he showed up in a pair of shorts, but he didn't have a gun on him. So it's not very easy to put that gun together. And they were saying a barrel was getting carried down his leg, even though he's wearing tight jeans. But then when he walked in, he had shorts on. So what did he do with the gun before he got there? And then he changed clothes, and then he changed back into those clothes, and they found him 33 hours in those same clothes that he was photographed in. And his family gets that $1 million from Bill Ackman, who the day before Charlie Kirk was murdered, he was talking about, I mean, it's crazy. He was talking about the Mossad running an operation through Jeffrey Epstein, and that the Jeffrey Epstein list needs to be released. And as he gets killed, the Republican Senate blocks the Jeffrey Epstein bill from passing, from being released. So this happens at the same time. Then they get to spin this narrative to pin the left and the right against each other. And you know, nothing gets them more fired up than the trans issue. They know that whole trans issue is really going to keep us arguing. So let's try and add the trans in there. Let's continue to inflame. Let's continue to argue about who's on more antidepressants. And I get caught up in it too. Sometimes I'm no better. A lot of times I'm an asshole. I try to get better at it because I know that that's a lower vibration way of viewing this entire thing. Right there, what that is exactly what we need to be avoiding, guys. We need to be avoiding that at all costs right now. Okay? Let's try and keep cool heads and try and be non-divisive and understand that a lot of that intense energy that you're feeling, it's justified, but it's a manufactured, fabricated narratives that they like to play each other on so that you guys aren't willing to have conversations with each other, so that you guys call each other Nazis or communists or Satanists just because the people at the very top, I do genuinely believe are Satanists, like literally. You know, just because I believe that doesn't mean that there isn't any justifications to the divisions that are happening between the left and right. I'm not saying it's all delusional, but it is a manufactured psychological fucking operation that's happening, you guys. They've been doing the studies for a long time. They know exactly how to get us wound up. They want us arguing about this tiny, tiny little issue. I mean, it's pretty big. I can understand why some people would feel very offended by that statement. But when you compare that to us getting into global war and being the enemy of the entire earth, including all the most powerful countries on earth, while we're dismantling our military, committing a genocide, if that can't be your number one priority right now, you shouldn't be unifying with the left and the right and everybody that wants to continue to have a sovereign country where freedom of speech and the ability to boycott a foreign nation while they continue to commit horrendous acts and bomb sovereign countries during the middle of ceasefire agreements multiple times in a row. We're talking about Iran. We're talking about what just happened right now. 142 nations in the UN just voted to recognize Palestine as a state, and we are going off to the side screen for a minute, guys.
Draft Resolution A/80/L1/Revision 1 is adopted. The Assembly will now take a decision on Draft Resolution A/80/L1/Revision 1, entitled Endorsement of the New York Declaration on the Peaceful Settlement of the Question of Palestine and the Implementation of the Two-State Solution. A recorded vote has been requested. We shall now begin the voting process. Those in favor of Draft Resolution A/80/L1/Revision 1, please signify. Those against? Abstentions.
The General Assembly is now voting on Draft Resolution A/80/L1/Revision 1, entitled Endorsement of the New York Declaration on the Peaceful Settlement of the Question of Palestine and the Implementation of the Two-State Solutions. Will all delegations confirm that their votes are accurately reflected on the screen?
Those are pretty interesting negatives. Let's take a look at that really quick. Let's take a look at those negatives really quick, huh? Kind of a little more random than I thought at this point that you'd be continuing to find a little bit of this. I mean, these countries are a little random. Not what I expected. I need to maybe do some digging into these countries and what their relationships are with either the United States, probably more particular Israel, because right now most people don't give a shit about their relationship with America that much, but we're still pretty large economical power for now. We'll talk about what happened with Qatar. Hopefully, we figure out something there quick, because that's a lot of money in our economy. Anyways, Hungary, Israel, Micronesia, Palau, Panama, Papua New Guinea, Paraguay, Tonga, listed in the nations of negatives. Thank you very much.
The voting has been completed. Please lock the machine.
There is Nauru as well. It showed up on the bottom. But it seemed like a lot of the...
The result of the vote is as follows. In favor, 142. Against, 10. Abstentions, 12. Draft Resolution A/80/L1/Revision 1 is adopted.
Okay, so there it is. A lot of empty seats right there, man. What is going on? United Nations, New York, a lot of empty
Endorsement of
seats.
this so-called declaration are not a serious attempt at peacemaking. These are procedural tactics, a misuse of this assembly to force through by the back door what cannot stand at the negotiating table. Once again, we see externally drafted texts rushed forward without transparency or any debate in this assembly. This erodes the legitimacy and trust of the UN. This one-sided declaration will not be remembered as a step toward peace, only as another hollow gesture that weakens this assembly's credibility.
Okay, that was pretty big. Did you just see that? So the declaration on that bill, let's go back just a brief moment there. The resolution called on Hamas to free all Israeli captives and relinquish the control of Gaza Strip. Good. That's necessary. Little interesting to think that they were funded primarily by Qatar, even though the Netanyahu regime wanted Qatar to fund it. So I don't know. That's an interesting thing to think about, right, guys? Can't tell me that's not a little interesting thought. That's a side thing right now, though. We're talking about this. Still very interesting.
Only as another hollow gesture that weakens this assembly's credibility. This is not diplomacy. It is theater, a carefully staged performance for headlines, not for peace. It doesn't shorten the war, it prolongs it. It does not weaken Hamas, it rewards them. It does not advance negotiations, it undermines them. And so we must ask, who benefits? Not the hostages in Hamas captivity, not the people of Gaza, not those who pray for real peace. The only beneficiary is Hamas. Consider France's recent pledge of statehood. Hamas welcomed it, praising, and I quote, they called it the political and moral pressure it puts on Israel. When terrorists are the ones cheering you, you have to ask yourself what you are doing.
Yes, we have map for peace, and we invite the party that is still pushing the option of war and destruction and attempts to eliminate the Palestinian people and steal their land, to listen to the sound of reason, to the sound of the logic of dealing with this issue peacefully, and for the overwhelming message that has resonated in this General Assembly today. For those who want peace, come and join us. For those who want to save lives, come and join us. For those who want to put an end to the war in the Gaza, this aggression, come and join us. For those who want to release of the hostages and the prisoners, come and join us. For those who want to put an end to using the denial of food and to impose famine against the Palestinian people in Gaza, come and join us. For those who want to rebuild and to reconstruct the Gaza Strip, come and join us. For those who want to have an end to this illegal occupation, come and join us. And for those who are interested in the implementation of the historic advisory opinion of the ICJ, come and join us. For those who want to have a two-state solution, to live side by side in peace and security, and to open the doors for integration in the entire Middle East, and for allowing the Middle East to reach its potential in terms of development, innovation, science, and cooperation, come and join us. All these details and many more details are contained in the declaration that we've endorsed today. And I believe that, Madam President, since this is the first major issue under your presidency that you face, maybe this is a good omen. Come and join us, all those who are interested in peace, interested in dealing with putting an end to the tragedy and allowing the people in the Middle East, all of them, to save their lives, to save the lives of children, and to open the doors for peace and development and progress and hope.
Damn. That. Oh, look at this. So many people are talking about this possibility, guys, that Israel killed Charlie Kirk in Utah. Netanyahu's big statement after. Okay, I'll just put you guys in on that, since a lot of you guys might not even watch it. Okay, this is some bullshit. Oh, this is bullshit. Let me tell you what he said. He said, oh, what do they want us to move the moon or something? Next thing you know, they'll say we control the stars. He was like making something to that effect. That's one of those little things where they don't even show what the hell he was actually saying. But it looks like everybody else is agreeing with that video. Here we go. Oh, the UN officially declares genocide in Gaza. This is the shit that we need to care about.
Israel's air assault on Gaza City intensified still further as its ground forces readied to move in. By Israel's own estimates, as many as 650,000 Palestinians remain in the city. This morning, rescue efforts underway to recover survivors from new ruins. This block, home to dozens of people, hit at 1 a.m. Rescue workers find Mara al-Haddad trapped. Over 10 long hours, they work to free her leg.
Well, luckily they did free her leg, but she lost 2 of her friends as a result of that Israeli airstrike. And as Israel carries out its deadly ground offensive in Gaza City, forcing thousands of Palestinians to flee, the UN Commission investigating Israel's conduct in Gaza has declared that they are, in fact, committing a genocide against the Palestinian people. So there was the Organization of Genocide Scholars who previously came out and declared that Israel was carrying out genocide. Now we have the UN Commission doing the same. And here's why, according to reporting from Channel 4 News in the UK.
Genocide, as defined in the Convention of 1948, is the crime committed with the specific intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial or religious group. The Commission says Israel has committed 4 such genocidal acts: killing members of the group through targeting civilians and the deliberate infliction of conditions of life that caused their deaths, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group through direct attacks against civilians, mistreatment of detainees, forced displacement and environmental destruction, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, including blocking essential aid, food, water, electricity and fuel, and finding that starvation had been used as a weapon, and imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group through the attack on Gaza's largest fertility clinic, reportedly destroying around 4,000 embryos.
Oh my God.
So not only are pregnant women getting killed, not only are hospitals being destroyed, where it's nearly impossible for a woman, or actually is at this point impossible for a Palestinian woman to safely deliver a baby. The fertility clinic was targeted and destroyed by Israel as well. Now, this commission had actually put out a report earlier that found Israel had committed war crimes against humanity. In fact, in March, for example, it accused Israel of targeting hospitals and other health facilities in genocidal acts intended to prevent births. But they didn't go as far as to accuse Israel of actually carrying out a full-blown genocide. Obviously, things have changed, and the latest report the commission put out says that Israel's actions in Gaza constituted genocide under the 1948 Genocide Convention, writing that Israeli authorities were aware of the high probability that their military operations, their imposition of a total siege, including the blocking of humanitarian aid into Gaza and the destruction of housing and of health systems and facilities, would lead to the physical destruction of Palestinians in whole or in part in Gaza. Cenk.
Yeah, so they concluded that the actions of Israel were both expansive, significant damage done here, obviously to say the least, and deliberate. And that is important for a genocide. It was done intentionally. So among the overwhelming evidence that they had were targeting children. They were shocked at the number of head and chest shots for kids in Gaza. So that's snipers hitting them on purpose and killing children, young children. So number two was the utter destruction of almost all the facilities in Gaza. Almost all the hospitals have been destroyed. All the universities have been destroyed. Even when they're absolutely empty, IDF has complete control over them. They say, well, maybe Hamas might come back later at an undisclosed time. So here they're concluding, no, they're doing it to absolutely destroy and annihilate all of Gaza, as their leaders have said on the record. There's several cabinet ministers said, we are going for total annihilation. And then not only do you see them saying that, but then you see them doing it, right? All of the universities and educational things have been wiped out, fertility clinics wiped out, everything wiped out, right? So the only thing left now is the Israeli side. And so that's where it gets interesting. So the uninteresting part is Israel's claim is, oh, everybody's biased against us.
Yeah, this is fake. This is an anti-Semitic attack.
Of course, but we all knew that, right? And at this point, I'm not even bothered by it anymore. Now they seem like a joke, right? Like a very sick, tragic joke, right? So, oh, the facts are anti-Semitic. If you weren't anti-Semitic, you would let us kill more Palestinian children with sniper shots and destroy life as we know it in Gaza.
That is what they're communicating.
Like
Let's
literally.
be clear about that.
Yeah, and it's absurd. There's no point in debating it anymore. We're 2 years into a genocide. Everyone on planet Earth knows it's a genocide. The UN took forever to get there because of enormous political power that Israel has. You better not call it a genocide. You better not call it a genocide. Well, they did anyway, right? So now the question is, can Israel pull off completing a genocide with the whole world watching?
Yeah, it appears that is the case.
Yeah.
That is the case because here in America, our government will aid and abet anything and everything the Israeli government wants to carry out, including genocide. And at the same time, we also unfortunately have, American citizens in this country who identify as, pro-Israeli Zionists, who will viciously go after anyone who has a conscience and speaks out against the unmitigated slaughter taking place in Gaza right now. They will intimidate them. They will go after their employers. They will essentially make it appear as though anyone who sees what's happening for what it is, okay, brutality, the butchering of children, the butchering of innocent people, those people get labeled as the bad guys. They get labeled as the bad guys. People get fired from their jobs as a result of this.
Yeah. So there's three entities basically left against the entire planet. Right, so the planet sees the genocide. Israel can do any kind of propaganda that they want, and they often talk about, and in fact, later in the show, we're gonna have a story of the former head of the IDF saying, the lawyers we have never stop us from doing anything. The only thing that they ask for is that we follow some guidelines so they could do better marketing for what Israel's doing in Gaza, right? So there's not even an attempt at being legal here. It's all marketing, right? So that's why the rest of the planet, we all have eyes and ears to see what they've done. Now, the only three groups left on Israel's side is Israel's hard right wing, and some of the Israeli citizens are dead set against this, and tons of Israelis, authors, composers, actors, and the list goes on, are now speaking out and going, no. We have to end this genocide. This is sick. This is not what Israel should stand for. Okay, so you've got the hard right-wing government of Israel. You've got the hard right-wing bullies inside America and Western countries whose job is to betray the countries they're in and bully the citizens of those countries on behalf of a foreign government, Israel, right? So that's an obvious group. Then the second group is Western leaders, and the third group is Western media. So those are the only people left on Israel's side. The rest of the world agrees this is one of the worst genocides we've ever seen. It's not because Israel's doing it, that's the problem. It's a problem whether Israel is doing it or another country is doing it.
Exactly.
So in modern world, can a country, just with controlling Western leaders and media, be able to pull off a genocide and totally get away with it? Is the entire world population irrelevant? So that is a hell of a question. That's the question that Israel's asking now. Can we get the entire world to shut up and follow our orders and be good little boys and girls and allow us to do this genocide, move the Palestinians out, slaughter them and move them, and then take Gaza and take West Bank and do it right in front of your eyes in the modern world? And I don't know the answer to that.
But don't hate Israel.
All right, well, you know what? Let's listen to the rest of them. They're on fire. Fuck it. You guys keep listening. This is really good. And you know what? I got a lot of things I disagree with chunk yogurt with, as fucking, sorry for the F word there, as Owen Schroyer calls him chunk yogurt. That's pretty funny.
Though, meaning the Israeli government. Don't hate the Israeli government. Don't hate the IDF for doing that in front of everybody, right? It's a live streamed genocide, but don't speak out about it. That would be wrong.
No, yeah, I'm past it today. Maybe I'll get back to it being angry about it tomorrow, right? But guys, at this point, the people defending Israel are only damaging themselves. This is going in history books.
They're loathsome people.
Yeah, and they're going to go and be featured in a museum. By the way, the good guys are also going to be featured in museums. So I saw an Israeli composer today that took a lot of heat, and he just stopped and said, no, what we're doing is atrocious, and we cannot keep doing this. And we've shown you Holocaust survivors, former Israeli prime ministers, etc. People going, no, 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 this isn't what Israel was supposed to be. So the folks who are now supporting the genocide are not even just on the Israeli side. They're literally on the side of being pro-genocide.
Yeah.
And so that's not a winning position and never will be. And they'll carry that moral stain with them for the rest of their lives. So the only question is, can we accumulate enough power to stop them? That's the only question. Every time.
All right. So anyways, I guarantee you this is like some bullshit. I listen to Candace Owens on a regular. She brings the receipts. She's covering her ass. She's not making up that shit, believe me. That Brigitte Macron story, that thing is way bigger. Okay, now I got some other news that I'd also heard. We're going to look this up together. 31. So up to 31% of the Gazan population is now dead, from what I'd heard, which is roughly, I think, 678,000 people are now dead in Gaza. Now, let me just check, because that sounds insane, but that's what I had heard just recently. It might be a part of the investigation for the United Nations. We will find out right now. I don't know where I heard this, but this is big news right here. Israel has committed genocide in Gaza. This just broke. Okay. I mean, this is some crazy news. Guys, I got to tell you right now, this is why I'm awake right now, guys. The reason why I'm not sleeping very good, because I'm going to tell you right now where this is actually going. Another reason why I feel like it's just, I don't want to be a Christian. Let me explain why I'm a Christian, why I become a Christian. Every time I look, just ask one question deeper, one question. Look a little bit further here, because I'm always on the search. I'm always trying to find answers. And then once you get to like the very, very top, you start going, whoa, like that's really dark. You start going, that is really dark. Like that's a lot darker than I even imagined. Like, what's up with that dome, that temple-looking thing at the Jeffrey Epstein Island, for one? Look at all the pedophilia and satanic imagery that you could find indisputably in Disney movies. The fact that Walt Disney was a 33rd degree Freemason. I lived with the real Freemason, a real 33rd degree Freemason. I didn't believe any of that kind of stuff until a couple years later, after living there with him. I ran into a police chief for the city of Sacramento, and he said that, oh yeah, I know him. I'm gonna leave his name out. I know him. I know him from the Freemasons. Oh really? Is he an actual 30? Well, he was a 33rd. Anyways, you don't really hear very many people like that. He was extremely paranoid. They always thought he was going to get killed, always throwing stuff outside, probably because he might have thought it was some sort of wire, or he said it was chemicals they were spraying on it, it was going to kill him. Who knows what's actually going on? All I know is that he knows a lot more than we know. A lot. And that stuff is real, guys. They found the shooter 33 hours after in the same outfit. That's so unbelievable. I'm sorry, guys. You guys got to have more common sense than that. All right, we're going to hop on the side screen now. I was just listening to something else today. Let me see here. Okay, we're going to go on this now. Why am I not hearing anything? What is going on there?
This religious belief, even if you were feeling in shock trying to figure out what happened, a ton of people appeared online, not just in this country, to tell you exactly what happened, exactly what it meant, and exactly what we should do next. And you can see why. With this level of emotion, rage, and grief in the air, it's pretty wise to leverage that much energy. It's almost like nuclear power. It can be used for good or bad. And a lot of people wanted to use it. There's no question about that. So they begin telling you, Charlie died for this, he lived for this, and he died for that. So the crazier reaches of the left, it was Charlie was a Nazi. And the lesson is Nazis get killed. It makes sense. He was a bad guy who got what he deserved, and a lot of them said that out loud. Yep. Certain parts of the right immediately told you that actually this was about something completely different. Charlie died for Israel. Many began to say the Prime Minister of Israel said that, and so did a lot of other people. Charlie was a defender of Israel, which he was, by the way, and therefore he died for that cause. But none of these explanations, all self-serving, are really satisfactory. They don't capture who Charlie Kirk was, and on some basic level, they're dishonest. Charlie was not a Nazi. He was not killed because he was a Nazi. Yes, he was a defender of Israel. He didn't die for Israel, however. Why did he die? What was his life about? What was the sin, the core sin that Charlie Kirk committed against somebody, power, that got him killed in the end? And the answer is right in front of us, certainly those of us who knew him. Charlie's life was defined by his Christian faith, not his spirituality, but his belief in Jesus, his life as a Christian. Now, everything in his life flowed from those beliefs. Everything he did, said, and believed came from the fact that he was, above all, a Christian. And that is and was, and in fact has always been, deeply provocative and offensive to the rest of the world. And why is that? It's worth thinking about it for just a second. Christianity doesn't seem like the kind of religion that would provoke people to anger and violence. In fact, it seems just the opposite. It's the world's most profoundly nonviolent religion, maybe the world's only truly nonviolent religion, a religion based on a man who Christians believe was also God, who, as he was being led away to be tortured to death on made-up charges, scolded one of his disciples for fighting back. This is a religion committed to love above all and to living in peace and harmony, truly. It's a universalist religion that believes that every person has a shot at heaven. It's not exclusionary at all. And so you would think it would make sense that if you're a government or if you're in power, that you'd want a lot of Christians living in your country, because they're not going to cause massive problems. Not a lot of sincere Christians are fomenting insurrection at any given moment. Pretty much none, most of the time. They're tidy, they get married, they love their children, they pay their taxes, they're commanded to pay their taxes. So why wouldn't you want a nation full of Christians? Why wouldn't you encourage this religious belief, even if it wasn't yours? Why would you hate it? Well, there are a couple of reasons. There are a couple of things about Christianity, and these were evident throughout Charlie's public life, that are deeply provocative to the people in power. And the first is the insistence that Christianity comes with inherently that you are not God. You are not God, and neither are your leaders. God is God, and all of us stand before him in the end to be judged, and all of us will be found lacking. Christians believe the only way to heaven is through Jesus. That's the only way. But all of us, whether we believe in Jesus or not, are fallen. We are sinners. We are less than we ought to be. We are not gods, and neither are the people who lead us. And this has a lot of implications. The first being, if you're not God, you don't get to do whatever you want. There are limits. There are rules that you didn't write that you have to abide by. That's not a judgment. That's a statement of fact. Some call it natural law. It's been the basis of every functioning society since the beginning of time. But the basis of our society is the Christian understanding of justice, which flows from that belief. You are not God. God is. He writes the most basic rules. You abide by them, period. That's the basis of our law. That's the basis of Western law. And that is a threat, a challenge to people who would ignore the limits on their behavior, very much including our leaders and very much including the most powerful people in our society, whether they're elected or not. Nobody wants to be told you're not allowed to do something, and Christianity inherently tells people that. It doesn't judge them, it just states it clearly. No, you do not have the power to kill, except possibly in self-defense, but you can't just go killing people. And you can't go killing people because, and this is the second thing about Christianity that tends to set the teeth of the powerful on edge, Christianity insists that every human being is created by God. Every single one. And that means that every human being has a soul, a distinct, unique soul created by God. It is, once again, the only true universalist faith there is. And the New Testament is the story of this, an underread collection of books. That is not the story of the Old Testament. It is very much the story of the New Testament. In the New Testament, all people are God's chosen, every single one. And the story itself makes that point. The founder of most Christian churches in the early Near East was a former Pharisee, a Jew who was in charge of killing Christians, until he famously met Jesus on the road to Damascus. His name was Saul. It became Paul, and he is the most prolific author in the New Testament and the basis of a lot of Christian theology. And his life tells the story. People can change, no matter what they look like, no matter what they previously believed, no matter where they're from, no matter what language they speak, because they are created by God. And every person, every single person, whether you like them or their relatives or the way they look or not, has that chance because all were created by God and all were loved by God. That is the basis of Christianity. That's the Christian story. And so a sincere Christian proceeds with that belief. There is no tribalism in Christianity. There is no identity politics. It's the opposite. You may prefer to be with people who look like you. That's fine. But God doesn't prefer to be with people who look like you. God prefers to be with all people because he created all people. He's the God of the universe, not just of the people you like. And that, again, has massive implications for the way that sincere Christians live and for the way that Charlie Kirk lived his life. And the first is, if other people have souls, if they...
Okay, I'm going to say a couple things quick since I'm cooking right now. I am cooking. I got to tell you. There's one thing I could say that I genuinely, wholeheartedly disagreed with Charlie Kirk on, that I think he was at the verge of evolving on, aside from his support of Israel, was likely and hopefully his view on Muslims. His view on Muslims was terrible. So I can't help but disregard a bit of what Tucker Carlson's talking about, because the things that he said about Muslims were very dark and very not cool at all. He had been sipping that Zionist Kool-Aid, which he was just stopping the use of when he got killed. So maybe we would have seen him have a redemption with the other Abrahamic religion. But as of now, I haven't seen that. And I don't think that I don't think it's fair to characterize him as somebody that really thought like that yet, because I believe that he was a good guy in a lot of ways. I'm going to be honest. I could tell the dude had a big heart. He really did have a big heart. I don't have to agree with you on everything, because I realize that mankind is a fallen species, just like what Tucker Carlson was talking about there. A fallen species. I am of the fallen man. So not everything I know is going to be right. I'm open to having different confrontations. But one thing I could tell you is that Charlie Kirk, you were off. You were wrong about Islam. You were wrong. Those are your brothers. They believe in Christ. Muslims believe in Christ. I'm going to get this straight right now. They're my brothers. I love you guys. I could tell you guys have a different belief in a lot of ways. That's okay with me. You do you. Okay? You have the freedom to do you. That's not my problem. Especially when you compare it to what Israel's doing right now. You guys maybe have that evolution with your women wearing clothes. That would be nice. I would appreciate that. I'm not saying I like everything about the Muslim religion, but at least you guys respect Jesus. I respect the fact that you respect Jesus. It's the most important thing. And I'm not even a big Christian. But Jesus is real. Woo, Jesus is real, baby. Jesus is real. Okay? Jesus is real. Okay, done. I'm done, guys. We're going to go back over here. I'm going to hop on the side screen with you guys. But yeah, this whole idea that he thought everybody was completely 100% like great and all that. I think he did believe that everybody deserved to live, and they all had a special soul, though. And I heard him say this about all kinds of different marginalized communities. So that's important. You know, he definitely, okay, Tucker Carlson, yes, but I wish that he would have been nicer about Muslims, okay? Tucker Carlson is right. Tucker Carlson actually knew Charlie Kirk. He's like a big brother to Charlie Kirk. Tucker Carlson's a motherfucking gangster, okay? A real free thinker. I don't have to agree with him on everything, but that guy is a real deal. He did lie about being in the CIA, though. Let's leave that alone, okay? He never did release that 9/11 documentary. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and he was on Piers Morgan just talking about the fact that Israel he knew about the 9/11 event before it happened. And the dancing Israelis. No, he didn't. Yes, he did. And then he never released the 9/11 documentary after Charlie got shot. Yep. That's a fact, guys. We'll have to go over there. Do you guys want to go on that side of the internet? You want to listen to no, you guys want to go on that side of the internet. We're going over there, guys. We're going over there. All right. Piers Morgan, Tucker Carlson. Oh, wait a minute. What am I doing? Let's go over here. I got YouTube fucking premium like a big kid. Woo! All right, this was 8 days ago.
Why, for example, they never investigated it? Why, for the the official story on 9/11 is a complete lie.
He never released that documentary, guys.
The pain and outrage of that day and use it to convince Americans.
He never released it.
I'm not alleging that they committed 9/11.
Why didn't you release the documentary? Sorry, I made the mic crack. Why didn't he release the documentary? Because that was due on 9/11, and he's talking about the Israel involvement in that whole event, which is kind of new information from a journalist that big. You don't see him that big. You do see journalists talk about Israel's involvement in 9/11. Not that big. Not as big as fucking Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's big to be talking about that, okay? Just want you to think about the scope of all of that and the fact that after Charlie Kirk got shot, he went on the Charlie Kirk show, which, A, he respects the man, but he never released that documentary, which was long in the making for it. He had been talking about that for a while, and it never came out on 9/11. Hopefully it continues to come out, okay? I'm not trying to hype it up, but it's just kind of made me think, like, how would I feel if I was Tucker Carlson and that shit just happened? Like, how would I feel if I was Tucker Carlson? I'm on Piers Morgan talking about Israel, about ready to do their shit, and getting, like, you know, very anti-Israel, like going in on it hard, like on 9/11, I'm dropping the receipts on Israel on 9/11. The day before Charlie Kirks got shot, who was just starting to turn on him. It had to have opened up his eyes at least a little bit, right? It had to have been one of those events where he kind of stopped a little bit ominously and went, yeah, I don't know. He was really saying, I mean, he did demand the Epstein list like the day before he got killed. Yeah, that Ben Shapiro interview he did was kind of strange. Yeah, he did question October 7th. Maybe I should not drop that 9/11 documentary. Yeah, Tucker. I see what happened. I don't know if the rest of everybody did, but I'm pretty sure they all did. If not, it's just another piece that you know at least the inner psychology of how he was thinking. Tell you that much. I know. He's a smart guy. He knows what the fuck's going on. That's why he hasn't released it yet. He's still thinking about it. He's not sure if he is okay with the possibility of dying. He's probably thinking to himself, well, okay, you know, maybe I can wait just a little bit longer on that one. Maybe the UN will deal with it, but there are 142 countries recognizing Palestine. No, it's not happening. There's only one way, and it's if the American people were to overturn, but that's why they're killing them. The number one demographic they are fearful of losing right now, that they're in the process of losing, is young conservatives. They're losing them at mass with events like what Tucker Carlson spoke at, the Turning Point event. That was a huge, drum roll please, turning point. It was a huge turning point, guys. Anyways, I'm on a bit of a roll right now, but I'm telling you guys, man, all these things I'm talking about, the real things that you guys could look up, and the real things I think you should understand, you should be curious about, that are very potentially important for us. Okay? The couple things that I'd like to research, I'm going to make a list. We're going to do a longer one today, okay, guys? We're going to fucking do this one a little bit longer. And I'm going to go over here, and I am going to put down a list. Qatar response. We're going to see what they did for their response with the finances. I'd actually heard that there was $1.5 trillion that they had been injecting into the U.S. economy to keep us afloat. A $1.5 trillion deal. I don't know if you know, but that's a lot of money. A lot of money. A lot. That's 1,000 billions, guys. Do you understand how much money that is? 1.5 trillion. I have to check out that Qatar number. So anyways, a lot of different things going on. We were curious about that, but let's go and listen to this for a little bit longer now. We're going to go on to this while I continue to make this list of things that I want us to look up while we're doing this.
11. but I am stating, because it's a fact, that they were aware the hijackers were in the U.S. Even right now, as we speak, the CIA is effectively refusing to release information that they have from 24 years ago. They should be forced at gunpoint to divulge this. I'm not an anti-Semite, obviously. I'm not even anti-Israel. And you're calling me names is not going to stop me, because I don't have to take orders from you about what I'm allowed to know or not know, because it's my country. So
these are the people that are very close to the Zionists.
Face is Iran. That's a lie. It's not an endorsement of Iran, okay? Doesn't make me...
Why is this significant? Okay, can we just really quick? Why is it significant? People like Tucker Carlson. Why is he a significant figure? Because the only support that Israel has right now that's left, that's remaining, is the conservatives. And who has the most power as far as political figures? Well, one was Charlie Kirk, and we know what happened to him. Who's the next domino to fall? It would be Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. Okay, that's why it's really important that we make sure that we hear our voices get heard, because these are very at threat. We need to make them known that they are not alone, and we need to be out there discussing these things. You don't have to agree with everything that he speaks on. You don't have to do that. That's not anything I'm asking you. But I am asking you to remember the braveness, just how brave you have to be on this part of the political environment, to be a member of this particular political community and speak out against Zionists when the entire MAGA regime is all funded and controlled by that foreign nation, and likely Charlie Kirk was killed by them. That's big. That's why it's so important that Tucker Carlson has a voice.
A simp for the Shiites.
President Trump told reporters at the time that you had called him and apologized. Is that true? The biggest dividing line in politics is arguably no longer right or left. Instead, it's a lot to do with trust. There are those who broadly trust our institutions and our experts, and who generally believe in the stories and the mythologies about our history and the events which define it. On the other side of the people who increasingly don't trust any of these things. They see a deep state, a swamp, and a cabal of vested interests who are anything but America first. That dividing line explains a lot about MAGA's division on everything from the Epstein files to US support for Israel's war and the decision to bomb Iran. This week marks 24 years since 9/11, the deadliest terrorist attack in American history. For most of those 24 years, there's been no real dividing line over how most Americans interpret the horrific events of the day itself. But Tucker Carlson's about to release a documentary series with the tantalizing tagline, "It's time Americans learned what actually happened." And Tucker Carlson, founder of the Tucker Carlson Network, joins me now. Tucker, welcome back to Uncensored.
Thank you, Piers. Thanks for having me.
You're looking very sprightly, if I may say so.
Thank you. I think
That's
your
quite the
intro
delay.
you make a smart point that it is about trust. It's not a classic partisan division. And I'm really struck we spent the last 4 months looking into 9/11, reassessing the explanations we were given by the government for 9/11. And one of the things that really struck me was the viciousness with which anyone who questioned it, certainly in the first several years, was treated with. You know, they were dismissed as crazy. By the way, I participated in that.
Yeah.
I attacked people who questioned 9/11, so I'm very culpable there. But there's a very simple way to dispel conspiracy theories, to make people with dumb ideas look foolish, and that's by disclosing what actually happened. It's by telling the truth. It's through transparency that you gain trust. It's not, I mean, if you ask your children, where were you last night? I'm not going to tell you. Does that engender trust? Of course not. It destroys it. And so there's also a sense in which it's outrageous that the U.S. government could presume to hide from the people who own the country, the citizens, the truth about an event that changed the nation more than any other in our lifetimes, any since the Civil War. It's a completely different country since 9/11. Millions of people died in the aftermath of 9/11. And so what exactly is the justification for not telling us what happened that day? And they haven't, period.
Well, let me play a trailer from the series. Let's take a look at this.
The The official story on 9/11 is a complete lie. The 9/11 report is a joke.
You have the CIA following two men all over the planet, and then eventually even to America, right? And you don't tell the FBI. 9/11 Commission cover.
So what did happen? What did the government know? What did foreign governments know? There was a cover-up. Why? It's been nearly 25 years. It is time Americans learned what actually happened.
It's a great trailer. What to you, though, Tucker, are the biggest lies perpetrated on the American people from 9/11?
Well, the core lie is the 9/11 Commission itself, which was an instrument, a political instrument of the Bush administration run by a guy called Philip Zelikow. And from beginning to end, he stage managed the explanation for 9/11 in a way that benefited the neoconservative factions within the Bush administration. The point was to leverage the pain and outrage of that day and use it to convince Americans that we ought to invade Iraq, which of course had nothing whatsoever to do with 9/11. And he wrote the commission report with that in mind. And by the way, he wrote it before the investigation took place. He literally sketched it out before they knew what the facts were. And then during the course of the investigation, he systematically, I'm not guessing, by the way, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is the testimony of people who are directly involved in the commission. Chairman Tom Kean, the former governor of New Jersey, Republican governor, he stage managed the entire thing and prevented investigators from looking into like core questions. For example, the CIA was fully aware that many of the hijackers who committed 9/11 were in the United States. They had followed them, as the trailer suggests, around the world. 11 out of the 19 hijackers had visas for travel to the United States issued in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, at exactly the moment that John Brennan was the station chief for the CIA in Saudi Arabia. They knew that they were here. They didn't hide the fact that they were here. I mean, Khalid al-Mihdhar, who was a 26-year-old Saudi, the plane that hit the Pentagon, was in the San Diego phone book, and he was being followed by the CIA. I mean, this is all documented. And not just by the CIA, by foreign intel services, probably the British, possibly the French, definitely the Israelis. They knew. Now, I'm not alleging that they committed 9/11, but I am stating, because it's a fact, that they were aware the hijackers were in the U.S. and were planning a terror attack against the United States, and they never passed that information to the FBI, to local police, much less to the American public, and 3,000 people died as a result. So what is that? Huge parts of the 9/11 story were left out of the commission report. For example, what happened to Building 7, which was not only not next to the Twin Towers, which were hit by airplanes, but had a building in between itself and those buildings, collapsed that afternoon for reasons that no one has been able to explain since. You're not a lunatic for asking. There is no there's no plausible explanation for how that building collapsed.
Well, so let's talk about that.
That's not even mentioned.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment,
Yes.
because it's one of the many things that have raged since. If you look into the investigation into Tower 7, the findings of the investigation into it were that the North Tower, when it came down, had set off a load of fires in Building 7. And it was a steel structure and shouldn't have gone down, but it did. That these fires burned all afternoon, and I think it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon or something, the tower eventually gave way to the welter of fires raging inside it. And it was the only time that had happened to a structure that was built in that way. However, there has been another tower very similar to that in structure, which has since gone down in Tehran. So it's no longer the only one. In other words, there is another example of a tower like that collapsing. So when it comes to the specific theory about that, what is the alternative explanation? I mean, if you're examining another theory other than the one that the investigation concluded was simply that the North Tower came down, fires were set off in Tower 7, and then it eventually collapsed. What is the other theory which we should give more credence to?
I don't know. I don't know that the onus is on me or anyone who seeks the truth about what happened to come up with an alternative theory. The onus is on federal authorities to explain why, for example, they never investigated it. Why, for example, the rubble and the steel from that building was carted off within hours and sent out of the country to Asia. Why, for example, an analysis done not by kooks, but by chemists found traces of explosive material in the dust from that day, why structural engineers who have kind of no skin in this game came to the conclusion that that just couldn't happen based on all available evidence, and that none of that is addressed at all or even mentioned in the 9/11 report. So, and there are all kinds of anomalies, as I know that you're fully aware, and there are possible explanations to explain all of them. For example, the BBC report on air saying the building had fallen when it hadn't fallen yet. There are all sorts of reasons to wonder, like, what the hell is this? But it's not incumbent on us to provide explanation. It's incumbent on the people running the government and running the supposed investigation into this to tell us, like, what was that? And
I mean,
never
look,
bothered.
I have a very open mind. The reason I'm interested to watch your documentary series, I have a genuinely open mind, and actually, I would say it's been more opened generally about this kind of thing since the COVID pandemic. That I was too, I think, credulous about what the authorities were saying through the pandemic to my detriment.
It's pretty
You and I
cool
have had this
seeing
conversation. So
Piers
I
Morgan
have
change.
a very open mind about this. I mean, on the specifics, for example, the BBC report you mentioned was based on a false Reuters report that they retracted soon afterwards and said it shouldn't have gone out. And the building, you could see the building behind the BBC journal. So it was obviously ludicrous. CNN did the same thing. But having been in the news game as you have, on big breaking news stories, fog of war stuff happens. And if it was a genuine error by Reuters, okay. I remember, for example, just as a comparison, I remember being on air at CNN when the hurricane came through, Hurricane Sandy burst through Manhattan. If you were probably at Fox then, I think. But if you remember, half the lights went out in lower Manhattan. And I remember a report coming from CNN that the stock exchange was underwater, and that had an immediate impact on global markets. And it turned out that was a false report. So these things can happen. US national debt is more than $37 trillion. And these are uncertain times for the global economy. It's enough to make you think, maybe now would be a good time to buy some gold. Whether it's a hedge against inflation, peace of mind during global instability, or just sensible diversification, Birch Gold Group believes that every American should own physical gold. And they created something special. Until the 30th of September, if you're a first-time buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 in free metals on qualifying purchases. To start the process, request a free information kit now. Just text PEERS, P-I-E-R-S, to 989898. Make right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate of up to $10,000 when you buy before the end of September. Text my name, PEERS, to 989898. Claim your eligibility.
I don't know why I allowed that to happen.
Again, cock up, or do you think there is merit to suggestion that some people somewhere must have known more than we've been told?
Well, we know that people did know more than we've been told. I mean, somebody shorted the airlines and a bunch of the banks that were affected. Now, this is not a conspiracy theory. It's not a guess. This is publicly available information. Now, the FBI found out the identity of the person or institution that shorted these events on 9/11 and made a huge amount of money by doing that, but never released that information. So why can't we know who clearly had foreknowledge? I mean, if you're shorting American Airlines a week before 9/11 when no one knows it's coming, I think you should have to explain why you did that. And if you're shorting Barclays and banks that were affected by 9/11, why can't we know who you are? These are public markets, by the way. This is not private equity. This is publicly traded equities. So I wonder about that. So clearly, yes, there was foreknowledge. By the way, there was a team, this is according to the FBI, by the way, this is the FBI saying, there was a team of clearly intel-connected foreigners who were arrested after 9/11, as you well know, videotaping the terror attacks. This is, I'm almost verbatim quoting from the FBI.
The dancing Israelis.
And the FBI determined that they apparently had foreknowledge of the attacks. So why can't we know more about that? Exactly. Shut up. That's bigoted. No, this is my country, actually. I know people who died on 9/11. Everything was changed because of it. I promptly went off to the Middle East, just like everyone else in our business. I'm sure you did as well. And then we lost our civil liberties at home. We immediately started torturing people and locking up people for years. They are still locked up in Guantanamo Bay with no charges at all. And the rest of us, very much me included, nodded our heads and are like, yeah, they're bad. They're Muslim terrorists. Now, I think a lot of them were bad, and they were Muslim terrorists. On the other hand, if your government is allowed to torture people and lock them up indefinitely without charging them, how long before they do that to you? We don't do that here. Now, I know it's very common in the UK now, which is an authoritarian country. We don't want that here, and 9/11 dramatically changed our assumptions about what the government is allowed to do. So, and by the way, I should say, the main beneficiary in the United States of those attacks was the CIA, which allowed them to happen. So the CIA budget became, more than doubled. Of course, we're not allowed to know what the CIA budget is, even in government. This is a fact, by the way. If you ask a high-level official at the White House currently, what's the CIA's full budget? They can't tell you. It is a secret that is so closely guarded that even people in charge of administering the government don't know what their budget is. But from what we can tell, it's more than twice what it was before 9/11.
Okay, but what you're suggesting with your phraseology about that is that the CIA were part of a kind of inside track knowledge about what may happen, which is obviously an incredibly serious
No, I'm not
charge.
suggesting that. I'm not suggesting that. I'm stating the facts, which are that the CIA was fully aware that many of these hijackers were here, that those visas were issued in a country with which we have very close security service cooperation at a time when John Brennan was running a station there.
But that's different to saying that they knew what was going to happen.
Well, they actually did know that these people were planning a terror attack because they surveilled a meeting planning it in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, a year before, and then followed the guy as he came to the United States and arrived in San Diego for flight training. So again, I'm not guessing about any of this. These are established facts. There's no person, including then CIA Director George Tenet, who would deny this. They'll say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Okay, fine, whatever, attack my character as you will, but tell me how I'm wrong, and of course I'm not wrong. So I'm not alleging or suggesting anything.
I'm not saying you're right or wrong or anything. All I'm saying is that from everything you're saying, it is a leap. It is a leap. There is a demonstrable difference, I would argue, and by all means push back on this, but I would argue that there's a demonstrable leap between knowledge of bad people moving around and maybe monitoring them and aware they may be up to bad things, but actually having coherent, clear knowledge in advance that they were planning the attack using planes on the World Trade Center.
I understand. You're saying that intent matters, and I would not. Of course, I would not dispute that. Intent does matter. It matters under the law, and it matters morally. Did you mean to do it? Yes, that matters. However, it doesn't matter as much as we pretend that it does. If I pull up to a casino and leave my toddler in the back of the car with the windows up and just kind of forget, and the kid dies, do you say, oh, you didn't mean to kill your own child? No, you'd say through your negligence, your child died.
Yes.
It's murder. Now, it's not a first-degree murder, but it's certainly at least a manslaughter.
It's certainly severe negligence. I agree with that.
We know.
I do, and I agree with you.
That is a kind of murder.
Yeah.
This is exactly, just on a side note real quick, this is exactly the argument I make whenever I talk about what happened with the fires in L.A., the incompetence of Karen Bass, and what happened in Pacific Palisades and in the, what is that called? What's the name of that area right now? Eaton Canyon, that entire area. Altadena, heartbreaking. Just completely heartbreaking what happened over there. And a really beautiful area, just a wonderful place. Demolished, both of those places. Demolished by the fires. And that was due to extreme negligence. And I compared it to letting your toddler hang out in the backyard with a pit bull in a pool. Your toddler is probably either going to drown or get mauled by the pit bull if you're not there, and you're just going to leave it there, leave your child. That is exactly what happened there with the lack of fire preparation. Anyways, these are all important things. You guys could get in on this a little bit. I'm just giving you little sample platters here. I was really hoping. All right, here's another one. Candace. Actually, let's just go right to the mouth. Right to the mouthpiece.
Well, it's going to be a heck of a Tuesday for us, guys. Where should we begin? I'll tell you this, something is not right. Something is not right. And I am going to need you, whoever it is that's listening to this podcast right now, to wake up. Because I am telling you, this is not a battle between left and right. We all thought that at some point. We believed that. You're my enemy, you're my enemy. It is not a battle between Russia, Ukraine. I don't care what your political issue of the day is. What is happening right now in the world and what just happened to my friend Charlie Kirk is a battle of sheer evil versus goodness. What do I have for you guys today? Okay, well, first and foremost, the indictment against Tyler Robinson was just released, and I have a lot of questions that I think need to be answered. Regarding his trans boyfriend, Lance Twiggs, well, I just spoke to a family member who told me a lot about Lance Twiggs because the media is kind of presenting him as this do-gooder. You might be interested to know that his family has a different perspective. Also, Turning Point employees are contacting me, a lot of them, okay? And I am not liking what I am hearing from them about things that took place leading up to that Hamptons event, some changes at the organization in the months leading up to that event, and what had been happening more broadly at the company over the last year. Speaking of which, Bill Ackman, you may have caught that he responded to me about the Hamptons with a lot of words to really say nothing at all. And I want to be clear, I am not done, okay? I'm coming for everybody. Charlie Kirk's death is really just a beginning. So welcome back.
Lord, please protect this woman. The most important journalist alive right now, in my opinion, is probably Candace Owens. I'm just saying. I know she sounds crazy. A lot of people don't watch her.
Updates regarding the Charlie Kirk case. First and foremost, what always stood out to us about this shooting was Decoy Boy, right? We're all on social media. We all watch the news. We have all, whether we wanted to or not, witnessed, thanks to social media and the news, a lot of shootings. A lot of shootings, whether it's gang-related or otherwise. And I have to say, I don't know if I'm the only one, never in my entire life have I seen a situation when a shooting happens and then somebody completely unrelated to the shooting that just happened jumps up and down and says that they did it and gets arrested for saying that they did it, implying that they did it. Well, for whatever reason, George Zinn, who is a 71-year-old man, was moved to do that, right? Instantly. Charlie Kirk gets shot. Suddenly, the 71-year-old man jumps up and creates what is obviously some sort of a distraction, okay? We have eyes. We can see that. That's not normal. He creates a distraction. So let's just take a look at this clip of him being arrested in the aftermath of the shooting. Well, now it's about to get even stranger because since he's been arrested, he's now facing charges of obstruction of justice because he didn't do it, right? Why would you do that? Why would you obstruct justice in this manner? And now, in addition to those charges, we learn that he's been harboring images of child abuse, okay? He has kiddie porn. This is the headline. I can't make this up. Man arrested for allegedly faking confession to Charlie Kirk's killing. George Zinn, accused of obstructing justice, was also booked in connection with images on his cell phone related to child abuse, okay? So we learn from this article that after being arrested, the 71-year-old man for this second-degree felony, which is obstruction of justice, he was also, when the police had approached him, he was being weird about giving them his cell phone, okay? So they took him into custody, they treated him for a medical condition, and then they start asking this guy questions about, what are you doing? Can we see your cell phone? And he's being really cagey about giving over his cell phone. They're like, okay, we're trying to get to the bottom of why you would stand up and scream, shoot me, immediately following the aftermath of this murder, okay? And what they discover is that when asked by an officer okay, after they figure out that he's not being cooperative, is that he has images. He has images of kiddie porn. There's no other way to say this, of related to child abuse on his cell phone. Now, what does that tell you about this guy? Okay, what does it tell you about George Zinn? What that signals to me about George Zinn is that I've read a lot about Jeffrey Epstein. I've read a lot about blackmail operations. The people they tend to go after are people who are into children. Full stop. Now, I'm not saying, I obviously, he's just been charged here, so I guess we have to say allegedly, but that's what's coming out now, that they found images on his cell phone. So this guy who is into this sort of thing, we also figure out that in the past he has given interviews related to September 11th and Al-Qaeda. He is in Utah and he is obstructing justice, and he also happens to have this totally disgusting addiction of some description. I'm assuming it's an addiction, and that's what he's harboring. He's harboring child abuse images on his phone. That's what I'm going to tell you. That's my instinct immediately. I don't like this guy. That is suspect, okay? Something to watch. Now, in terms of this indictment, now that we can formally read the indictment, there's been a lot that's been said that I think a lot of the miscommunication is perhaps coming from Governor Cox. I think he, in and of himself, I probably should look into Governor Cox. I'm not sure why he said some things that are apparently untrue. Maybe he misspoke. I understand there's a lot of pressure when it comes to this investigation. But let's just take us through this indictment. I think it's important for us to go through it so that we can see the setup here of what took place on September 10th. Now, first, they provide basically an overview in this indictment. It's a probable cause statement. They tell us that basically after 33 hours, they really love saying it, 33 hours, I don't know why, they keep signaling that to us, on September 11, 2025, when Tyler James Robinson surrendered to police at Washington County Sheriff's Office. That was when it happened. They found DNA consistent with Robinson on the rifle trigger. After shooting Mr. Kirk, Robinson hid the gun. They're going to get into that. Discarded the clothing that he was wearing when he fired the rifle, and he told his lover/roommate to delete incriminating text messages and not to speak with police. And also, they will be charging him count 6 because children were present at the time of the shooting. Okay, now, to get through this, we are told that the suspect, after this shooting took place, that there was a police officer who immediately looked upward and realized that he had heard the sign of a rifle, knew that it was obviously coming from the rooftops. They then began crawling through the footage to see what had happened. They tell us that this discovery led to an intensive review. Let me go actually back up to this paragraph. Police reviewed surveillance from the camera that was covering the roof and discovered that it recorded an individual that was dressed in dark clothing who had crossed the railing from the public walkway and dropped onto the roof at approximately 12:15 p.m. Now, just to very quickly, I'm going to just tell you, according to our timeline, we know that Charlie gets shot at 12:23 p.m. So they're now telling us that he was on that roof since 12:15 p.m. So he's setting up that shot, we can assume, for about 8 minutes, okay? It goes on, although the individual moved out of the camera's view for a short time, the camera again captured the individual running across the roof and then low crawling to the area that the officer had recognized as where the suspected sniper had dropped into a prone shooting position. After a short time, which matches the known time of the shot, the individual arose and then ran across the roof to the northeast. So nothing in here implies that he had, taken apart the shotgun. That just seems to be now removed from the narrative altogether. It goes on to read that this discovery led to an intensive review of UVU surveillance recordings to attempt to track and identify the suspect. Surveillance revealed the following, that at approximately 11:51 a.m., the suspect had entered campus from the north. He is wearing a black shirt with an American flag. In its center, a dark baseball cap, large sunglasses. Throughout the surveillance, the suspect keeps his head down and rarely raises his head enough to get a clear image of his face. As he proceeds across the campus, he is seen walking with an unusual gait. The suspect walks with very little bending in his right leg, consistent with a rifle being hidden in his pants. This unusual gait continues until the suspect is seen crossing the railing off the open walkway and onto the roof, where he leaves the camera's view. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna say is they've only sent us screenshots, right? We've only seen a picture of him coming up the staircase. It looked to me like both his legs were bending. I don't see why they don't just release. Why don't they just release this fully so we can make sure that this is the same person that we see walking across with a limp, right? That footage which was provided by TMZ. Also, you will notice that nowhere in this indictment as we go on are they going to mention which Governor Cox spoke about. Like, first he came in a different outfit. Remember, Governor Cox said he was wearing the light shorts and maroon shirt. The implication here being that maybe he came to come scout things, to check things out. At first, this is him, but then he comes back in the black outfit. This is missing from the indictment, and I'm wondering why. What is the explanation for that? That would be a part of it if you were scouting the shooting. Now they're just like, let's jump into the guy that is wearing black, and we're not going to give you footage. We're going to tell you that this is him, and you can assume that he slowly walked up this staircase and was obscuring his face from view. Okay. Then it tells us that a camera later captures the suspect as he runs across the roof. He gets into the shooting position, and then immediately after the shot was fired, we know that he runs across carrying an item whose shape is consistent with a rifle. The suspect is then seen climbing down the roof. He appears to drop the item that he was carrying as he hits the ground in a controlled fall. He then picks up the item and runs toward the northeast end of the campus. It tells us that's how they then expand their crime scene investigation. They followed his escape path to the northeast end of the campus, where they believe the suspect left campus and entered a wooded area. In that wooded area, investigators found a bolt-action rifle wrapped in a towel. So again, there was no disassembly. It's wrapped in a towel. Presumably, that's how he covered it while he was running. The rifle contained 1 spent round and 3 unspent rounds. This is consistent with the facts officers observed at the time of and immediately after the shooting.
We need to take a minute here. This is something that bothers me so much. And I'm sure Candace has talked about it already, but this is the footage of the shooter that's been driving me so crazy.
As he hits the ground in a controlled fall, he then picks up the item and runs
Watch
toward
this closely.
the northeast end of the campus. It tells us that's how they then expand their crime scene investigation. They followed his escape path to the northeast end of the campus, where they believe the suspect left campus and entered a wooded area. In that wooded area, investigators found a bolt-action rifle wrapped in a towel. So again, there was no disassembly. It's wrapped in a towel. Presumably, that's how he covered it while he was running. The rifle contained 1 spent round and 3 unspent rounds. This is consistent with the facts officers observed at the time of and immediately after the shooting. There were no shell casings that were found on the roof, suggesting a bolt action rather than an auto-loading weapon, and only a single round was fired, okay? Then they tell us what was actually inscribed, and these are essentially memes. "Hey, fascist, catch," says one on one cartridge. You've got "Notices bulge." What's this on another cartridge? "Oh, Bella, chow, Bella, chow, Bella, chow, chow, chow," on a third cartridge. And on the fourth cartridge, it reads, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO." Okay, they detailed that. The rifle, the ammunition rounds, and the towel were then sent for forensic processing, and that the DNA was consistent with Robinson that was found on the trigger and other parts of the rifle, the fired cartridge casing, and 2 of the 3 unfired cartridges and the towel. Okay, they were able to immediately locate the shooter. They were unable, to immediately locate the shooter, so that's when they published the photos of the shooter from their surveillance, and they asked for the public's help. Now we're going to get a little bit more of a narrative change, right? They tell us that as they continued their investigation on September 11th, Tyler James Robinson then walked in to the Washington County Sheriff's Office, and he is accompanied by his parents and a family friend to turn himself in, okay? Now again, he didn't confess yet, but he's here to turn himself in. Robinson's mother stated the following to police, that on September 11th, the day after the shooting, She saw the photo of the shooter in the news and thought that the shooter looked like her son. She then called her son and asked him where he was. He said he was at home sick and that he had also been homesick on yesterday, September 10th, when the shooting occurred. Robinson's mother expressed concern to her husband that the suspected shooter looked like Robinson. So she's calling her husband and she's going, hey, this kind of looks like our son. And then his father agrees that looks like their son. So Robinson's mother explained to the officers that over the last year or so, Robinson had become increasingly more political. He had started to lean more left. He was becoming more pro-gay and more trans-right oriented, that Robinson began to date his roommate, which is a biological male who was transitioning genders. We're going to get to him in a second. This resulted in several discussions with family members, but especially between Robinson and his father, who have very different political views. In one conversation before the shooting, Robinson mentioned that Charlie Kirk would be holding this event at UVU, which Robinson said was a stupid venue for the event. Robinson accused Kirk of spreading hate. Robinson's father reported that when his wife showed him that surveillance image of a suspected shooter in the news, he agreed that it looked like their son. He also believed that the rifle that the police had suspected the shooter had used matched a rifle that was given to his son as a gift. And as a result, he then contacts his son and asks him to send a photo of the rifle that was gifted to him. Robinson did not respond to that. However, Robinson's father spoke on the phone with Tyler at that moment, and Tyler implied that he planned to take his own life. Now, his parents were then able to convince him to meet at their home, not to do that. And as they discussed the situation, Robinson implied is the word they use here, that he was the shooter, and stated that he could not go to jail and that he just wanted to end things. When asked why he did it, Robinson explained that there was too much evil and that this guy, Charlie Kirk, spreads too much hate. They talked about Robinson turning himself in, and they convinced Robinson to speak with a family friend who happens to be a retired deputy sheriff. And at Robinson's father's request, the family friend met with Robinson and his parents, and they convinced Robinson to turn himself in, okay? Again, he did not confess, but he turned himself in. And they then detail that they tell him, hey, look, also bring in any clothes that you used because you don't want the police to then have to search the property of your parents. So anything that you use, you need to bring over, okay? That doesn't exactly make sense because Robinson is living with his trans boyfriend, but that is, apparently Robinson replies that at that moment that he had disposed of clothes in different area. So they're looking into that, okay. Now we're getting to the roommate portion, which is very interesting to me, and I will tell you why. It's interesting to me because I obviously have had a lot of tips. I've had a lot of conversations with people that knew both of these individuals. When I say both, I'm referring to Tyler Robinson, who is being indicted, but also his boyfriend, who has not been indicted. And the conversation that I am having is that Tyler's classmates and the neighborhood are very shocked that Tyler would be, first and foremost, involved in this at all. So right away, they told me, no way this guy is wearing the same outfit from 33 hours ago because he was very tidy. He sort of kept to himself, but he worked with his hands and he was kind of a good person. There were no signs here. Like this appears to them to be like, this is a very good family and that there were certain narratives out there that didn't make sense to them. Like they could not compute them as it pertained to Tyler Robinson, okay? And they're saying there's no way if like, they're not saying he couldn't have been involved. I very, very much want to be clear. I believe that Tyler Robinson was involved on the basis of this evidence, but rather that there's no way he could have acted alone, that this had to be a part of some wider plot, okay? And when I'm speaking to people that are close to this situation, what they are shocked about is the fact that only Tyler could have been arrested because it's a different perspective when it comes to Tyler's trans boyfriend, okay? Tyler's trans boyfriend's name is Lance Twiggs, and they are very shocked. In fact, the people that are intimately involved in the situation are saying, we thought he was definitely going to get charged because apparently, and again, I'm going to say this, allegedly, he had been arrested or taken in on the same day Now, the media narrative is that that guy was being really cooperative, he had nothing to do with anything. Okay, we're going to go through that. And again, I'm going to tell you what his family is saying. I'm referring now to Lance Twiggs. Let's get to what the indictment tells us about him. Police interviewed Robinson's roommate, a biological male who was involved in a romantic relationship with Robinson. The roommate told police that he had received messages from Tyler Robinson about the shooting, and he provided those messages to police. And then it goes on, describing those messages. On September 10th, 2025, oh wait, they're not telling us the time. I don't like that. I hope that's just you forgot, but I need to know exactly when you're saying these messages were sent, okay? Because I need to fit them into my timeline, okay? Clearly, on the basis of what I'm about to read, these messages had to have gone out after Charlie Kirk was shot. If I'm using my context clues, my Blues clues to put things together, but they're not clear here. They just say on September 10th, 2025, no time given, the roommate received a text message from Robinson which said, quote, "Drop what you are doing and look under my keyboard." The roommate, Lance, then looks under his keyboard and he finds a note that states, quote, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it." The structure of that is weird. I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it. Okay, that's just structurally, that's not proper English, okay? It's either I have, okay, or I had, past tense. Again, not clear. Police found a photograph of this note and the following text exchange then took place. After reading that note, the roommate texts Tyler and he says, "What? You're joking, right?" Robinson writes, "I'm still okay, my love, but I am stuck in a REM for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you." The roommate replies, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" Robinson replies, "I am. I'm sorry." The roommate replies, "I thought they caught the person." Robinson replies, "No, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I had planned to grab my rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle still lingering." The roommate says, "Why?" Robinson says, "Why did I do it?" Roommate says, "Yeah." Robinson says, "I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I am able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it." The roommate says, "How long have you been planning this?" Robinson says, "A bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it," referring to the rifle, "but there's a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it." Robinson says, "I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. I don't know if it had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about prints. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Didn't have the ability or time to bring it with. I might have to abandon it and hopefully they don't find prints. How the F will I explain losing it to my old man? Only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel." What? You're worried about explaining losing the rifle to your father, not worried that you left the rifle and therefore it's obviously going to be found out. Like the only thing that you left was the murder weapon? This is weird. This chain is weird to me. It's weird to me that we don't know what time. I don't know what he means. Where is he stuck here, guys? Do you have a clue here? "I'm stuck in a REM for a little while longer. It shouldn't be long until I can come home." Is it a typo? I should have asked you guys. Okay, that's the town. Okay, that's the town. "I'm stuck here for a little while longer. It shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still." So is this happening during lockdown? He tells him to check under and to see, check under quickly and see, and I took care of it, and he's where? And now he's giving him an accounting of exactly what's taken place, which means if this is right after, and they're still in lockdown, he's what, monitoring the situation? Because this is going to give us a timeline, whether they tell us when these messages happened or not. The fact that he already knows that they grabbed some crazy old dude and that they also interrogated someone in similar clothing, we're going to be able to go back and plot exactly when that happened, or at least when the public was informed, because this whole correspondence is very strange to me. It's very strange to me. He then is even more explicit, talk about trying to cover your tracks, but then explicitly texting everything to your lover. He says, the only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. Remember how I was engraving bullets? The effing messages are mostly a meme. If I see notices bulge on Fox News, I might have a stroke. All right, I'm gonna have to leave it. That really effing sucks. Okay, so if this is our guy, oh, we're not done, let's finish. That really sucks, he's gotta leave it. And then he says, judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine. I think that was a $2,000 scope. And then he does a winky face. And then he tells him, delete this exchange. And then Robinson says, my dad wants photos of the rifle. He says, Grandpa wants to know who has what. The feds released a photo of the rifle, and it is very unique. He's calling me right now, not answering. So his dad's calling him. Okay, well, the dad, this is interesting. When is this text chain taking place? Okay, because we just heard that, the dad, they figured it out the next day. They're making it sound like this all happened back to back. Is this happening over 2 days? Why not tell us this instantly so I can work it into my timeline? Okay, are these messages day one? And then what, they had no correspondence at all until he jumps right back in and says, my dad's calling me. Where were you when your dad called you? You guys live together. Why are you texting at all? Why didn't this kid immediately call? If they're in lockdown and he needs to go back and get his rifle, right, this kid could have, and I'm speaking about Lance, could have contacted immediately and said, I'm getting a confession right now. I don't like that we are not being told the exact timestamp of these messages because, my timeline demands it. To close loop on how this enters, again, not knowing when this happened, Robinson says, my dad wants photos of the rifle. He says, Grandpa wants to know who has what. The feds released a photo, and it's very unique. He's calling me right now, not answering. Robinson says, well, since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty diehard MAGA. Robinson says, I'm going to turn myself in willingly. One of my neighbors is here. He is a deputy for the sheriff. Robinson says, you are all I worry about, love. I'm much more worried. The roommate says, Lance says, I'm much more worried about you. Robinson says, don't talk to the media, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comments. If any police ask you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent.
Okay, so you got those text messages. They came from them, right?
Yeah. Mark is going to jump on and say something. Go ahead, Mark. Yeah, he's the guy that's always in my ear.
Not always. I just noticed that around some of these exchanges, there's ellipses above them.
You're breaking up a little bit. What'd you say?
Around some of these exchanges, there's ellipses above, if you look really closely.
Yeah.
And it looks like they're cherry picking certain exchanges.
They had him do this after to pay for it, I bet.
Nowhere because they picked it from a totally different part of the conversation.
Yeah, these messages are clearly doctored, is what I would say. They're doctored. Now, they could decide why they're doing that. Tyler's being forthcoming. We're protecting him in some capacity. I find that to be unacceptable. Okay? Unacceptable. I want every single text message. I want timestamps. It is conspicuous that you are not telling us when this was sent, because it sounds like it's when the campus is on lockdown and he's got to go back and he's got to clean up, and then all of a sudden we're in the next day when his dad is getting clued in after the picture's been released. They're not telling us that, okay? And you have a right to be a little bit uncomfortable about that, because I'm a lot of bit uncomfortable about that. We need full answers. Further to that point, I have found this strange from the beginning that for whatever reason, we're not hearing too much about this Lance guy other than he's been extremely cooperative. He's handed over his messages. I'm not implying that Lance was involved, I am implying that it's weird that we're not hearing more about him, right? You're telling me he lived with the guy. You're telling me us now that he's been texting with the guy about his plans. They're in love. Is nobody interested in learning more about this character? Okay, so Tyler's people are saying Tyler's a good kid. People around Tyler, classmates are telling me he's a good kid. So I go into our tips box, and it turns out that actually Lance Twiggs' family has tried to reach out to me over the weekend. Obviously, I was in a very aggrieved state, and I was not prepared to even accept that Charlie Kirk was not on this earth, okay? And I realize that they're saying to me, like, you know, we want to speak with you, and there's more than one family member that has reached out because we trust you, and we don't trust the media. Good. Good by me. They are, it sounds to me, a very good family. They're absolutely horrified by what has happened, and they are similarly perplexed by there not being more out there about the person he was living with, especially because what they told me, and I can tell you this exclusively, is that the house that Tyler Robinson was living in with Lance is owned by them. Tyler Robinson is paying rent to them, okay? So they know Lance, obviously, and I'm going to cushion this with allegedly. It isn't allegedly that this is his family members telling me these details, but it is definitely, allegedly what they say until we can hear both sides, okay? I'm going to pull this up because I took notes regarding Lance because I want to know everything, okay? Lance, they told us, went to live with his relatives, so no longer in the house with his mother and father. Again, allegedly. His parents kicked him out junior year of high school because he was problematic. He just had issues. And at that time when they kicked him out, that wasn't exactly what they are saying legal for them to have done that. But again, he went to live with relatives and he has issues. They say that he allegedly has a lot of issues with drinking. That Christmas, approximately 3 years ago, he almost overdosed. He drank a bottle of vodka. They are telling me that they were there. They were present for this. And fear began to spread about whether or not even the family would be able to take care of him because of issues that he was having. Okay, he graduates high school, and then essentially the extended family says, we can't keep you in our home because of his behavior. Just this past Easter Sunday, they are telling me that he showed up on drugs and he was spouting out of his mouth about political stuff. And at this point, they felt that he could not be around children, that they felt that he had become increasingly more radical, increasingly more dangerous, and just sort of off the rails. They said that they're unhappy that the media is presenting him in this manner, like he's just this kind of soft guy, or a person that was just transitioning. There's nothing problematic. There's no prodding. They don't buy the story. Okay. Lance's family is telling me that they are not buying the current story and that they feel that more people are involved. First and foremost, they say that a lot of information should be able to be discerned by his devices because he was, according to them, deep web, okay? This is the person that is deep on the internet. They said that he was quite reclusive, that he was always on his devices, that he's always on the web, and that there should be more information that comes from there, okay? He turned 22, they told me, back in August, and that he was, as I said, very into this dark web stuff. I asked what he was doing for work, how are they even able to pay you guys rent? And they told me that he was doing some plumbing work with somebody else in the family. They told us that Tyler and him had been living together for at least a year, that they had not met Tyler despite the fact that Lance had wanted to foster that meeting, that the two of them, this couple, Tyler and Lance, were living in that townhome that is owned by Lance's family, and that Tyler was paying rent to Lance, and Lance then, of course, was forwarding that payment to them. Now, I had asked them about another persistent rumor that is arriving in my inbox, which people are saying who live in the neighborhood that they noticed some unusual traffic, and this individual family member said to me, yup, we are hearing the exact same thing. that they would prod that narrative further. But there was some unusual traffic, a lot of cars that were seen outside leading up to the shooting in the days before the shooting or the week before the shooting. I'll straighten out that timeline for you and get real specific, because I will pin down when exactly this was happening. But leading up to the shooting, that there were unusual traffic in the driveway where Tyler Robinson and Lance lived. Cars that were not recognized in the neighborhood. This was not a couple that hosted people. It wasn't like they were expecting them to have parties. And so other people are saying that is something that struck them as odd. There was unusual traffic at this house in the weeks leading up to this shooting. And again, I will perfect that timeline of exactly when, and I have gone out to people for evidence of that. But there were apparently lots of different license plates, and it therefore caused a little neighborhood kerfluffle, because other people were not able to park their cars because there were so many people that were at this house. Unusual traffic. Again, we are prodding that narrative. We are taking a look at everybody, because if I don't feel good about what we're hearing, okay, and Lance Twig's family doesn't feel good about what we're hearing, and we've got Decoy Boy, who's apparently involved in some deep internet stuff, I would say. It's a fair way to describe it. Decoy Boy, okay, George Zinn. There's more people involved. That's what I'm going to say to you guys. There is very clearly more people involved, okay? This feels to me like a conspiracy. And am I emotionally invested in this? Yes. Somebody said something to, oh, you're unstable. Yeah, you know what? You're right. I have been destabilized by watching Charlie Kirk catch a bullet in his neck and then being gaslit and told nothing to see here. We've got people all around him that are telling little lies. I don't like this, okay? This doesn't feel clean to me. I need timestamps. If you're going to be transparent, be transparent. I'm not saying that you're being dishonest, that you have these text messages. I am saying that I need them in my timeline, okay? And it is just weird that you're giving exact times about certain things, and then suddenly you're like, you know what, we don't need to be so exact anymore, and we can just extrapolate what we need to tell the public a certain narrative, okay? We, the public, don't need a narrative. We need every single plausible detail. If we are ever going to regain any trust in the authorities, post-Epstein world, okay? We're living in a post-Epstein world. It doesn't fly with us. That's not it, you guys. I have more to tell you. I am going to, I guess, at first, let's get through some ads, and we're going to get into Bill Ackman's, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just wandering excuse or wandering answer to our episode yesterday, which really didn't say anything. And I've got more people reaching out to us, people that were at the event, people that were at Turning Point USA. We got some questions to ask, and I'm going to ask all of them, because guess what? I don't take money from donors. So you got a problem here. I don't want your money. I don't need your money. What I want and I need is the truth. First and foremost, you guys, I'm telling you about Preborn, because every heartbeat tells a story, and at Preborn, they give moms in crisis the chance to hear that heartbeat for free, and that's exactly why I partner with Preborn, because Preborn is not out to judge women. They're making motherhood possible for them. They provide free ultrasounds. They share the gospel of Jesus Christ, and most importantly, they stay after the baby is born with real practical support by giving expecting mothers diapers, baby clothes, and even housing and financial help for up to 2 years after the baby is born. That is what true Christ-centered compassion looks like. And here's how you can be a part of it. For just $28, you can give a mom a free ultrasound once she gets that chance to see her baby, and she will be twice as likely to choose life. Preborn is on a mission to save 70,000 babies this year, so don't just say you're pro-life. You can actually live it by donating now. Call 855-601-2229 or go to preborn.com/Candace. Again, that's preborn.com/Candace. Telling you guys again about GNO land, because what if smart contract platforms weren't controlled by the elites or big tech? What if they were instead built by and for real builders, the people like you? That's the question that GNO land wanted to ask, and that's why they built GNO land. They started with Golang, which is a language real-world developers already use, and they built a new platform around it. It's transparent, it's intuitive, and it makes sense. There's not some confusing system of ones and zeros. It's open source, so you can imagine GitHub, but designed for on-chain collaboration and composability. Builders actually get credit for their work, and they get rewarded every time their code gets used, and that's really the value, not likes. not clout, but actual rewards. GNO Land rejected proof of stake, which is a system where the rich run the show, and they instead went with proof of authority instead, which is a DAO where contributors and not bad actors or Silicon Valley actually call the shots. GNO.land is open, it's fair, and honestly, it's pretty unstoppable. So if you are a builder and a freedom lover, or you're just tired of rigged platforms, go ahead and check out gno.land/Candace. Again, that's gno.land/Candace. Something that my team and I are always craving are beef sticks, specifically the ones from my friends over at Paleo Valley. Paleo Valley makes their meat sticks with 100% grass-fed beef, sourced from small-scale regenerative American farms, so you can feel good about what you're eating and what you're supporting. They stripped out all the junk, so there's no preservative, there's no gluten, there's no soy, there's no dairy, there's no sugar, there's no GMOs, just clean, nutrient-dense fuel, the way that food was meant to be. So whether you're road tripping, working late, or running around with kids, these sticks deliver high-protein energy. There's no crash. If you're keto, you're paleo, or you're carnivore, it does not matter. Paleo Valley will work with your lifestyle, not against it. They come in multiple bold flavors, including original jalapeno,
Sorry guys, I'm falling asleep. It's been a long night.
For everyone, with over 55 million.
All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna check out. I keep trying to stay awake, but I keep falling asleep.
Money back guarantee. Right now, you'll get 20% off your
Just
first
continue
order
to
at
watch this
paleovalley.com/Candace
and
with
hop on
code
Candace. Watch the
That's
rest of Candace, guys.
paleovalley.com/Candace, promo code
I am
Candace.
struggling to stay awake, and I got a long day
Okay, so I
tomorrow
wanna
at
be
work. So
very clear here.
you guys have a good night.
No one